and welcome back to another edition, another week of American Football News, the NCAA College Football Edition. Alright, so we just completed Week 13, or a regular season finale for a lot of teams across the country, and we are coming up to conference championship games. The Big Ten, the Big 12, the ACC, the SEC, the Pac-12, amongst many, many others, will be hosting the best of the best from their conferences to play for the right to say that they are the best in their respective conference. Today was also the day for the college football playoff selection, and the top 4 teams are in. We will go over that in 1 minute, along with an updated top 25 roster, and we will take a look at the Heisman hopefuls from this past week, along with a few highlights from last week and a few games to take a look at this week. First of all, the College Football Playoff Committee has made their selection, and the top 4 teams, the playoff football teams, if it were to start tomorrow, are as follows. Number 1, 2, and 3 have been 1, 2, and 3 for a while now, and have deserved to be 1, 2, and 3, and will remain 1, 2, and 3. Despite maybe a conference loss, but it'd have to be quite a whooping in order to get them out. Number 1, Alabama. Number 2, Clemson. Number 3, Notre Dame. Number 4 was the big question mark. It was owned by Michigan for a long time, who got absolutely annihilated. We're talking humiliated by Ohio State this past weekend. They have fallen out of the college football playoff story, and Georgia, the most deserving of all the teams, has climbed back into that ranking. Remember, this was a Georgia team that went to the national title this past year and took Alabama all the way down to the wire. They're 11-1. They beat the crap out of Georgia Tech. Now they have to put up or shut up against Alabama in their SEC championship game this weekend. All that aside, number 5 is Oklahoma on the outside looking in, and number 6 is Ohio State, who deserves to be where they are, despite the fact that they lost to Purdue by a good margin. It's the margin that they beat Michigan by that has impressed most people. They're up 4 spots because of that, and have a good shot at getting into that college football playoff picture if Georgia and Oklahoma can both lose. Coming in at number 7 is Michigan. Number 8 is the University of Central Florida. Number 9 is Florida University. And to round out the top 10, LSU. Coming in at number 11, Washington, who's up 5 spots after their big win over Washington State. Number 12 is Penn State. 13 is Washington State, who fell 5 after losing to Washington and were almost in that question or conversation of could they slide into the college football playoff scenario. That doesn't seem to be a matter of topic anymore. Coming behind them at number 14, the University of Texas, 15, Kentucky, 16, West Virginia, 17, the Utah Utes, 18, Mississippi State, 19, Texas A&M, 20, Syracuse, 21, Northwestern, who has won the Big Ten West Division, number 22, Boise State, number 23, Iowa State, getting in for the first time this year at number 24, the University of Missouri, who blanked Arkansas this past Saturday, 38-0, and climbing back into the top 25 again this year, the Fresno State Bulldogs, who will play Boise State for their conference championship. So we take a look at last week's games, and we will have those here for you in 1 second. We had some good matchups, we had some blowouts, and we had some shockers, to say the least. This is Week 14 that will be coming up this Saturday. We just finished Week 13 for those of you who were playing the home game. One of the games that happened this past weekend, the number 5 Oklahoma Sooners took on Big 12 rival number 16 West Virginia, and this was a classic shootout. The final score in this one was 59-56. No defense in that game, and that's one of the reasons why Oklahoma is on the outside looking in. However, if you look at their schedule and you look at the way that they've played SEC teams in the past, despite the fact that Oklahoma doesn't have much of a defense, they wreak havoc on the SEC defense, who are typically very, very good. So they might get into the conversation, but I think a lot would have to happen. The battle for the Apple Cup took place this past weekend in Washington and featured Washington versus Washington State. This was a game that I felt the Cougars were more than capable of winning, but the Huskies put their foot down and said, no, we are still the top dog in this conference, and were able to beat the Cougars 28-15. Of course, the big game of the week, the biggest rivalry in football, which is not true. The biggest rivalry in football is Alabama versus Auburn. But if you're in the Midwest, this is definitely one that you pay attention to everywhere or every year. Of course, it's not too often that two states take up arms against one another and fight a war for a strip of land, and that's what a lot of people refer to this as the Second Toledo War. The number 6 Ohio State Buckeyes took on the Michigan Wolverine, who had one of the best defenses ever seen in the last couple of years, and many thought that would help power them over the Ohio State Buckeyes. However, Urban Meyer had his team very, very well prepared and absolutely laid the smackdown on the Michigan Wolverines, embarrassing them in every way possible. 62-39 was the final score. Speaking of shockers, one of the ones that caught my eye this weekend was the Texas A&M LSU game. This was a game that went 7 overtimes. It was almost, if not 1 in the morning here in the Midwest by the time this game finally ended. No defense whatsoever was involved in this game. These two teams just slugging it out, and whoever was able to stand at the end of this fight was going to be the winner. And in this case, it was the Texas A&M Aggies, who ended up beating the Louisiana State Tigers by a score of, and I can't make this up, 74-72. The longest college football game ever played, or at least that's what I've been told. And that was the highlights from last weekend. We have a good number of conference games to take a look at this weekend. A couple of the bigger ones that are going to really be interesting to watch. Let's see here. The Pac-12 championship game, which takes place Friday, November 30th at 8 p.m., which can be viewed on Fox TV. Will feature the number 17 Utah Utes and the number 11 Washington Huskies. This is a game that I gotta say the Huskies are going to win, despite the fact that the Utes have been good in recent years. The other big conference game that you're going to want to check out is the Big 12 championship game, which is the Red River Shootout. All over again. Number 14 Texas will take on number 5 Oklahoma Saturday, December 1st. Kickoff is scheduled for noon. And you can catch that on the ABC network. It is our belief that the Oklahoma Sooners will be able to win this game against the Texas Longhorns. Their Heisman Trophy quarterback is way too good and has been playing way too well lately for them to let this one slip. And there's also a lot more at stake this time around, a possible college football playoff berth for Oklahoma if they're able to defeat the Texas Longhorns. The next game to take a look at is the SEC Championship game. Features 2 top 4 teams and a rematch from last year. You can catch this game Saturday, December 1st at 4 p.m. and will feature the undefeated Alabama Crimson Tide taking on the number 4 Georgia Bulldogs, who themselves only have 1 loss on the year. And this game is going to be big because if Alabama does lose, they may fall to number 4. If Georgia loses, they may fall out of the college football playoff conversation altogether. So we're really hoping that the Bulldogs are able to pull the upset, despite the fact that Alabama is perfect. Even if they lose this particular game, I don't see them falling out of the playoff picture. Too good to not be in. And they're the defending national champions. You can't deny them that. One of the other games that is going to be on the docket for Saturday is from a smaller conference, but definitely worth taking a look at because both of these teams are in the top 25. And these are 2 teams that are fairly well known and have been in conversation for the last several years. The Fresno State Bulldogs, coming in at number 25, will take on the number 22 Boise State Broncos. That is scheduled for Saturday, December 1st, and will have a 7:45 kickoff time. You can see this game on ESPN. Of course, the Big Ten title game is one that not a lot of people saw coming at the beginning of the year. A lot of people knew that it was going to come down to Ohio State, Michigan, or Michigan State, but nobody knew who was actually going to come to play in the West. And this year it was a surprising team. It feels like 1996 all over again because the Northwestern Wildcats, yes, Northwestern, is the best team from the Western Division in the Big Ten, and they will take on the Ohio State Buckeyes this Saturday for a chance at the Big Ten title. That game is scheduled for 8 p.m. kickoff, and again can be viewed on Fox. It is our belief that despite Northwestern's good year and the fact that they are playing for their very first Big Ten title since 1996, Ohio State is too good and will be able to easily defeat the Wildcats and possibly punch their ticket at a college football playoff berth. Speaking of college football, the Heisman Trophy, the most coveted trophy in all of college sports, has its candidates and has updated its candidacy for this particular week, and we will go over the top 4 candidates before signing off for the evening here in Michigan. The 2018 Heisman hopefuls, brought to you by ESPN, is as follows. Number 1, and he's been number 1 all year, the quarterback for Alabama, Tua Tagovailoa, won the Iron Bowl this past weekend in a fashion that only a few legends have ever been able to do. He had 324 yards against Auburn, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, and added a rushing touchdown to his repertoire. The 2018 stats for this man are as follows: 3,189 yards passing, 36 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 211 yards rushing with 5 rushing touchdowns. Quite a resume, if I may say so myself. However, the person behind him, number 2, Kyler Murray, quarterback from Oklahoma, was absolutely extraordinary, only missing 7 passes this past weekend against West Virginia. He threw for 364 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception, and had 114 yards rushing and a touchdown to add to that particular performance. His 2018 stats are, I feel, better than Tagovailoa's. 3,674 yards passing, 37 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, but he has 853 yards rushing with 11 touchdowns. These are numbers that we haven't seen since, and I dislike saying it, since Johnny Manziel. And if it were me, I would take Kyler Murray over Tua almost any day of the week. Number 3 is the Ohio State quarterback. Had a great day against Michigan, 396 yards passing, 6 touchdowns. His 2018 stats are even better than Kyler Murray's. 4,081 yards passing, 42 touchdowns, 7 interceptions with 127 yards rushing, and 4 touchdowns to complement on that. Coming in at the final 4th spot, or at least our final 4th spot on the Heisman hopefuls section of this show, is Will Grier, the quarterback for West Virginia. He didn't have such a very good day team-wise against Oklahoma, but personally, he did very, very well. Throwing for 539 yards and 4 touchdowns. There's no defense, absolutely no defense in Oklahoma. That's why he was able to throw for 539 yards. His 2018 stats are pretty good. Not as good as Dwayne Haskins, but definitely better than Kyler Murray's. 3,864 yards passing, 37 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. This is where you get me, though. Negative 90 yards on the year, rushing with 3 rushing touchdowns. Not saying that a quarterback has to run, but it definitely helps. All right, we're less than 30 seconds left in the broadcast. We appreciate you for taking the time to listen to us. Be sure to check us out on YouTube, on SoundCloud, or Spreaker.com. Hit that like button, subscribe. We do everything from college football to pro football and are thinking about dabbling into the world of basketball. All right, enjoy the conference championships, and we'll talk to you next week.